What's up everyone? Today we're going to speedrun chapter 1, 2, 3 of 034, Law 034 for Foundation of Law. Without further ado, let's go. First chapter, what is law? Definition of law, I will take from the Oxford English Dictionary, which defines law as the body of enacted or customary rules recognized by the community as binding. Moving on to the legal theory principles, we have two, which will be descriptive and prescriptive. For descriptive, it explains law that has been enacted, dalam arti kata lain, law yang telah wujud. However, for prescriptive, it explains law that has not been codified. For example, law of monopoly, macam mana nak main monopoly, semua tu bukan codified law, tapi dia still adalah rules dan ia adalah prescriptive law. So, moving on to the various approaches of law, we have 4 juries that will have a say in this topic. Nampak lagi ke? Tak apa. Number 1, Saint Thomas Aquinas, which defines law as an ordinance of reason by reason of authority for the common good and promulgated. So, he has categorized law into 4 categories, which will be lex eterna, which is the law, God's law for governing the universe and everything. Not only humans are subject to it. So everything in the universe will be subjected to lex eterna. The second one is lex divina. Lex divina is the law that has been passed to humans by God through divine revelation in the form of religious scriptures and texts and books. So, third one is lex naturalis. Lex naturalis basically dabbles in the rationality of human beings and how human beings perceive the good versus the bad. The fourth one, which will be lex humana. Lex humana is the most common type of law when we talk about law. The most common type of law that we refer to when we talk about law. This refers to This is referred to as man-made law. So any law that has been made by humans, passed by the parliament and all that, will be lex humana. Second juries that will have an approach to law is John Austin, which is a positivist. John Austin says that law is laid down for the guidance of an intelligent being by an intelligent being having power over him. Basically, he says that law is a command set by a superior being, in this case governments, to an inferior being and is enforced by sanctions. John Austin says that law without sanctions is not law. Therefore, any law that doesn't have any sanctions, such as the law of marriage, how the marriage procedure is being explained, if it doesn't have any sanctions, it is not considered law in John Austin's eyes. So, he has divided law into 2, which will be laws properly so called and laws improperly so called. In laws properly so called, he has divided again into 2, which will be laws of God and human law. So, laws of God is basically divine law, the one that we have explained just now, and human law, which is also the one that we have explained, human-made laws. Second part is law strictly so called, which is laws set by political superiors. For example, speed limits that have been enacted and also enforced by JPJ. Semua undang-undang yang diberikan oleh government ataupun siapa-siapa yang berkuasa adalah law strictly so called. However, laws not strictly so called is laws set by men but not in a superior power, in a sense that, macam contohnya kita ambil contoh seorang bapa yang memberi peraturan pada anak-anak dia, kalau kau nak keluar kau kena balik sebelum maghrib, kau kena balik sebelum pukul 11, semua tu. Itu adalah laws not strictly so called. So that falls under laws properly so called. Second one is laws improperly so called, which is again divided into 2, which will be law by analogy and law by metaphor. Law by analogy basically is society's opinion on how people have to act in a certain manner or situation. However, by law of metaphor, it is the regularities of nature not made by humans. This dia kata law ni sebenarnya adalah macam hukum alam tau. Jadi law ni termasuk dalam law of gravity, law of Newton's law of motion, law of momentum, semua tu That is law by metaphor. Okay, moving on to the third jurist, which will be H.L.E. Hart. He defines law as a system of rules revolving around primary and secondary rules, and he has again divided law into two, which are law which impose obligation and law which does not impose obligation. The former states that, basically summed up into one sentence, it is do this whether you like it or not. That means that law which impose obligation induces human beings to react and act in a certain way or carry out certain tasks, and also prohibit them from carrying out various benda-benda yang melampaui batas macam tu in the eyes of the government. However, for a law which does not impose obligation, summed up into a sentence, it is said that if you wish to do this, this is the way to do it. So essentially what law which does not impose obligation says is that it gives powers, or it confers powers to individuals to set up procedures and also processes for something to be done. Okay, moving on to the fourth jurist, which is Roscoe Pound. He was a sociologist. He defines law as an instrument of social engineering to fulfill the community's interests and provide a smooth machinery of society. He has said that lawyers act as engineers, in which they mold the law into the society, into how the society sees fit in the current status quo. Okay, moving on to the various perspectives of law, we have four, which will be cultural expression. Law, which is a cultural expression, can be explained as dengan mengambil contoh adat pepatih, adat temenggung, semua tu. All of that are the traditions of past generations, passed from generations to generations, and over time it has been absorbed into the law. So benda-benda macam yang aku cakap tadi, adat pepatih semua tu, itu kan semua adalah adat, tapi lama-lama dia dijadikan undang-undang. Second one is divine revelation. We have covered this many times in this video alone, which is the law directly emanating from God, and it's been passed down by religious scriptures. Third one is an instrument of government. So instrument of government demonstrates the close relationship between the law and the state. So citizens are obliged to follow. In the words of Malcolm Wood, law is one of the many tools within comprehensive political weapons. So in the instrument of government's punya perspective, we have two views, which will be the neutral view and the partisan view. In neutral view, it states that law is above everyone, including political parties, when it has been passed and must be followed by everyone. So even though you have a political party, you are still under the law, which is superior to everyone in that particular state. For partisan view, however, law is seen as nothing but an expression of support towards a particular political party. For example, in the Second World War, the Nazism political party has enacted a few rules and laws that have favoured their macam pengikut, dan dia discriminate the people who don't follow that school of thought, macam tu lah. Okay, so the fourth and final perspective of law will be the legal system. So I will only read from the definition brought upon by Chris Holm and Ned Time. Law equates into legal process on legislative and judicial activities such as creation of acts in parliament. Okay, macam tu lah. So we also have a few reasons to obey the law. First will be legal duty. As Lord Hailsham says, there is a duty to obey the law, due to prima facie that imposes duty to obey the law. Second, the fear of sanction, as explained by John Austin. Fear instilled by law through its coercive power is a crucial factor that motivates people to obey. Third, moral duty, by John Rawls. Individuals have a moral duty to obey law. Fourth, benefits and convenience, by H.L.E. Hart. Obedience to law is driven by an inner psychological inclination where individuals obey the law because they consider it right and proper to do so. This will include macam obeying the speed limit on highways, due to the fact that if you obey the speed limits, there will be less accidents that will occur, and it will be a benefit and convenience to everyone. Okay. Fifth will be general habits by John Austin. People obey the law because of habit of obedience, together with an ever-present threat of sanctions. This is from brought up. Ni macam kita dibesarkan dengan cara kita ikut peraturan. So bila kita dah besar, kita dah masuk dunia nyata, kita ikut undang-undang lah macam tu. Okay. We are done with the first chapter. Moving on to chapter 2, which will be law as rules. So, what are rules and what are the definitions of rules? I will pick one from Twining and Myers, which have stated that rules are a general norm guiding conduct or action in a given type of situation. Some of the characteristics of rules include they are imperative, they are associated with penalty or sanctions, and that's about it. There are a few types of rules, namely legal and social rules. As explained by E.A. Ross, social control is a broad term to cover not only law but also public opinion, religion, education, custom, and other less obvious things such as art. Okay, we're moving on to the first type of rules, which will be legal rules. They are officially approved by the state's legislative body. So this is the ones in the Federal Constitution, in the Penal Code, in the books of acts. That all of those are legal rules. Second will be social rules. There are descriptions of what people do. So basically, in a society, how people ought to act in a certain manner or a certain situation falls under social rules. And social rules are divided then into 6, which will be first, religion, which will be the original source of law since it emanates from God. Second will be moral rules. They cover manner, character, and proper behavior, sort of in an informal way, an informal setting. Third will be customs, which will be generally accepted behavior among most people in a society. These are macam apa yang kita accept daripada orang and apa yang orang expect kita untuk buat, macam tu. Fourth will be ethics, and this governs more on the professional side of businesses. For example, when you're a doctor or a lawyer, someone who has authority and someone who has knowledge, ethics is seen as how we deal with clients in a mannerly and properly way. Fifth will be fashion rules. That is a style that is considered best in that particular time. So right now we have the resurgence of a lot of cores in fashion, which will be for example business core, gold core, Y2K, semua tu yang small top, baggy bottom tu, semua itu adalah fashion rules yang mana kalau kita obey dia macam is considered good lah, macam tu. The sixth and final category of social rules will be taboo. It is considered as any expression, word, object, or action that is forbidden due to superstitious or religious belief. So this covers things such as homosexuality, racism, and semua itulah, sebab dia adalah discriminatory and it is forbidden by mainly religious reasons lah, macam tu. Okay, why do we need rules? This dives into the truism of human nature. First one will be human vulnerability. We know that humans are weak and they are easily influenced to commit crimes. So, laws and rules are set to set boundaries to humans on what they can and cannot do. Second will be approximate equality. We must admit that men differ in size, agility, and intellect. So, what rules do is it provides an approximate equality to everyone regardless of their physique and intellect. Third will be limited altruism. We also must be aware that humans are selfish, self-centered, manipulative, and opportunists. This ties quite closely into the human vulnerability aspect of truism of human nature. Okay. Fourth will be limited resources, which says that in our world, every resources are limited. It's not infinite. So laws and rules set a kind of equal distribution of these resources to every human being. And the fifth will be limited understanding of strength and will, which says that humans cannot understand long-term effects of their decisions. Okay, Moving on to the contrasts of primary versus secondary rules, I will talk about primary and then I will talk about secondary. Primary rules impose duties and obligations. They involve physical movement and changes, but there are three drawbacks. Mainly, they are static, number one, uncertain, and number two, they are uncertain as the rules punya scope, how far the rules cover each and every aspect of our lives. And the third is its inefficient maintenance with no authority. All these three drawbacks will be compensated by the secondary rules, which I will explain later. Okay, moving on to the validity of primary rules, it is made by the legislation, so it's very valid. The enforcement will be formally enforced through authorities such as the police. The compliance will be external control, which will be backed by the police punya tugas untuk memastikan kita mengikut undang-undang. And sanctions will be legal sanctions, imprisonments, fine and all that. And the last one, dispute settlements will be done in legal proceedings. Okay, that will be primary rules. However, for secondary rules, they introduce new rules to the primary rules, modify and extinguish old ones. Easier said, secondary rules are rules of primary rules. So what this means is, primary rules set a general guideline for that particular law or act, and secondary rules, they will specify what those acts cover and encompass in a particular akta lah, macam tu. Okay, moving on to the compensation of the three drawbacks, which should be primary rules are static. They are uncertain of the rules punya scope, and they are inefficient maintenance due to no authority. The first compensation, which will cover the staticness of primary rules, is rules of change. Rules of change will means that secondary rules give power to the legislators to amend, change and modify new rules to better suit the macam current climate in a society. Second will be rules of recognition, which will recognize one act punya keluasan skop sesuatu akta, dan juga sejauh mana sesuatu akta tu akan cover dalam kehidupan kita. Itu adalah rules of recognition. Lastly, the rules of adjudication. This will confer and also give power to authoritative bodies to enforce the law. So this will cover the inefficient maintenance of primary rules due to no authority. Okay, moving on to the validity. It is informal because it is not codified, because a large part of secondary rules are social rules. Betul lah. The enforcement is through norms because yelah, kita ikut norma lah sebagai secondary rules kan, macam tu. And compliance will be internal control, so every individual has to have an incentive or has to have the drive to comply with secondary rules. Sanctions will be social repercussions, macam kita viral dekat social media, orang bagi side eye, semua tu lah, itu adalah social repercussions. Legal sanctions tu macam aku cakap tadi, pergi penjara and semua tu. However, dispute settlements are done through non-legal means. Dia tak pergi court. Okay, we are done with chapter 2 and we will move on to chapter 3, theories of law. Definition for theories of law, I will take from Cicero. Jurisprudence is the philosophical aspect of knowledge of law. So what is jurisprudence? Jurisprudence is the knowledge of other subjects like history, sociology, anthropology, economics and politics. So all of these are the philosophical aspect of the law by the lawyer. Okay, moving on to the first theory of law. From the naturalist point of view, they basically say that laws are law of nature and it comes from God. So naturalists believe that law comes from God through religious texts and scriptures, and it is concerned with the good deeds of people. So natural law is related to a thesis which we will call overlap thesis, and it states that law and morality are two of the same thing and they intersect each other. This means that all law is good law because we must picture a Venn diagram with two circles. One is law, one is morality, and they intersect in the middle. The intersection of these two aspects is what natural law is seen through the lateralist point of view. Okay. Moving on to the main proponents who has proposed the theory of natural law. We will take two main proponents, which will be Saint Thomas Aquinas, and we will refer to the 4 law types we have covered in chapter 1, and William Blackstone. William Blackstone says that nature's law is coeval with mankind and is commanded by God himself. It is superior in obligation to any other. It is binding throughout the world, in all countries and at all times. No human laws are valid if they contradict this. Okay, moving on to the characteristics of natural law. We have 4, which will be: it is universal, it applies to every single human being on the planet. It is immutable, meaning to say that it cannot be changed by humans due to the fact that it comes from God. It is eternal, it will be used from the beginning to the end of time. And it is higher law, meaning to say it is superior to any other law in the world. Moving on to the contributions of natural law, we will look at the public policy. Natural law concerns public policy, public morality, and social justice. And this can be seen actually in the French Revolution, which states that the French Revolution was based on the idea that the freedom of an individual is a right that he must have. Therefore, they have fought for their freedom in the French Revolution. A case study that is referred to when talking about natural law is in the case of Reedy Minder 1976. So aku akan explain dalam BM sebab aku kurang faham kalau dalam BI. So case Reedy Minder ni sebenarnya dia adalah seorang budak yang terencah akal. Dia 11 tahun dan dia perlu go through a sterilization operation. Kiranya dia macam nak mandulkan perempuan tu sebab perempuan tu kan terencah akal. Jadi mak ayah dia nak dia dimandulkan supaya dia tak macam mengandungkan anak orang sesuka hati macam tu. Okay, so since dia nak mandulkan budak perempuan tu, mak ayah dia yang bagi consent. Mak ayah dia yang consent kan on behalf of that particular retarded 11-year-old. Tapi because of the fact that operation ni melibatkan human rights, specifically the right to reproduce, and since the operation is the deprivation of those rights, the consent must come from the individual who will undergo the operation. But since she is retarded, dia tak boleh bagi rational thought by herself, jadi operation tu dibatalkan macam tu. Sebab natural law ni dia concern to human rights macam tu. So the criticisms of natural law will be, we have 2, which will be there are too many meanings and approaches to natural law. A lot of historical and political philosophical jurists, they have interpreted natural law in their own interpretation. So we are confused as to which interpretation and definition we must follow. So this was dikatakan oleh John Austin yang cakap benda ni. And for the second criticism by Rudolf von Jering, he was a sociologist. He says that not all people follow the same God, therefore we cannot pinpoint which God are we following, because it is an order from God, but kita tak tahu kita tengah ikut Tuhan yang mana. Adakah Tuhan agama ni, Tuhan agama itu, macam tu. Okay, second theory of law will be positivism. It is an expression of the will of the sovereign. So macam aku cakap tadi, laws are a set of rules imposed by the superior to the inferior being. So this is what positivism essentially means. And it is divided into laws strictly so-called, and only laws strictly so-called are laws because if we can recall from earlier, laws strictly so-called are laws that has been imposed by a person with authority or superior authority macam tu. So they view only that as laws, and benda-benda lain semua bukan undang-undang dah terus, sebab dia bukan diberikan oleh orang yang berautoriti. So it is concerned with the separability thesis, which says that law and morality are separate. Tadi dia intersect, sekarang dia separate. Law and morality are separate. Law is not concerned with its moral values. Basically, law in the positivist punya point of view is blind to moral values. This is due to the fact that different people have different moral values based on their upbringing. So kita tak boleh cakap yang semua orang ada same moral values. Main proponents for positivists are John Austin, which says that the existence of law is one thing, but its merit or demerit is another. Klaus Faber has defined positivism more simply. He has said that the definition of law must be completely free of moral notions. So law must be interpreted by itself, morality must also be interpreted by itself, and they cannot be intersect. Okay, some of the characteristics, we have 3 characteristics of positivism, which are law and morals are separate from each other. They focus law on the formal study of law, and the final one is it obviously opposes natural law in its characteristics and also its main ideas. Some of the contributions of positivism is in the case of Jabba versus Public Prosecutor in 1995, in which the court has said that all laws are considered valid so long as it has been validly passed and it is not concerned with whether or not it is fair, just or reasonable. So all these 3 are blind in the eyes of the law. Okay, some of the criticisms of positivism is obviously it is a one-way projection of authority. So dia tak ada balasan tau, sebab government akan bagi kita undang-undang, tapi kita sebagai rakyat kena ikut sahaja. Kita tak boleh oppose ataupun kita tak boleh pertikaikan pun undang-undang tu sama ada baik ataupun tak, macam tu. Second one is this absence of morality and justice, obviously. And the third one, not all law imposed duty and punishment. Some laws only provide the framework of one process. Dia macam ada undang-undang yang dia hanya bagi prosedur untuk sesuatu perkara itu dilakukan. Contohnya dalam marriage kan, untuk kita berkahwin kita kena ada itu, kena ada ini, we have to go through this and that. So it does not impose any punishment, but in the eyes of positivism it is not considered as law. So it is not, dia macam tak logik lah. Takkan semua benda kau kena bagi hukuman baru kau nak katakan itu adalah undang-undang. Tak logik. Okay, third one is the sociological school of thought, which demonstrates a law and society relationship, and it emphasizes on every legal issue and diversity in society. So they dive deeper into each and every issue that they face in a society, and they do not blindly follow the codified law as it is. One of the main proponents of sociological schools is by Roscoe Pound, which says that law is an instrument of social engineering to maximize fulfillment of interests of society. Second one is from Rudolf van Gering. He says that every society has its own individual interests and group interests. So if these two interests clash, which will be the individual and public interests, if these two clash, the public interest will always prevail because it is concerned with the higher majority of the society. Apa yang masyarakat nak akan sentiasa menjadi keutamaan bila dibandingkan dengan apa yang individu nak. Macam tu. Some of the characteristics of sociological school are, it is not a closed concept. So in the sociological school of thought, law is something that is more flexible. It can be molded into different types of situations based on its suitability. And it has a heaviest emphasis on social justice. As we said, Rudolf von Gering says that public interest will also always prevail, so it emphasizes more on social justice. They also dismiss natural law, and sociological school of thought is motivated by a community's response. It is basically utilitarian. It brings the most benefit to the most amount of people, and that is the effect of sociological law. However, belum lagi. A few contributions of sociological school of thought is it gives meaning to the core letters of law. This means that law can be interpreted more dynamically due to the fact that sociological schools they define law as something that is more fluid, more lebih senang untuk dibentuk lah macam tu. Dia tak perlu ikut satu benda yang rigid macam tu. In the words of Woodrow Wilson, the Constitution is not a mere lawyer's document. It is a vehicle of the society, and the spirit of the vehicle is always the spirit of its age. Macam tu. Okay, some of the criticisms of sociology is it cannot predict a society's future interest. So, kita bayangkan kan, kalau pada hari ni kita nak harga beras turun, jadi undang-undang parlimen akan keluarkan satu undang-undang untuk menurunkan harga beras. Okay, tapi pada contohnya dalam 3-4 tahun lagi, kita tak concern pun pasal harga beras, kita lebih concern pasal harga minyak. Tapi proses untuk mengesahkan undang-undang untuk turunkan harga beras tu, dia dah lah lama. Jadi walaupun dia lama, dia tak digunakan dengan lama sebab dia dah tak relevan dalam beberapa masa ataupun beberapa tahun yang akan datang tau. Sebab society punya interest ni dia akan sentiasa berubah macam tu. And itulah saja. Itu adalah chapter 1 sampai 3. That is chapter 1 to 3, 034, LAW034 for Foundation of Studies. Thank you. So I have referred to my notes, bukan textbook ya. Jadi ini bukan yang internal circulation, ialah own notes. Okay, that's all. Bye.